I think institutions can do a lot in helping faculty become good mentors. And I'll just sort of go through a whole list of these. I think you've got to make sure, I think schools have to make sure that their tenure and promotion practices or their annual evaluation practices for faculty include questions about mentoring and include questions about the effectiveness of that mentoring. I think you have to ask students about that too, because I think students are sometimes our best judges of what we're doing. Is that effective or is that not effective? So I think you've got to look at those tenure and promotion and annual evaluation qualities. I think you have to be willing to set up programs, and by that I mean commit budget dollars and somebody's time and space for undergraduate research programs that specifically emphasize or highlight mentoring and really raise that issue of mentoring to the top of the list. Most of the times it's just an afterthought. We ask a faculty member to work with a student, but we don't necessarily ask if that faculty member is equipped to work well with those students. And so whether that means setting up workshops or training programs or check-in programs for those faculty who are serving as mentors, I think that that's important to do. And I think it's part of a professional development program also for those faculty to learn about something that perhaps they haven't had much training or expertise in, and in terms of working with those particular students. And so I think, for me, I think about that coming from the chief academic officer position, and I think, does my institution, how are we talking to the mentors? How are we working with them? What are the questions or the challenges or the problems that they're running into with students? They may be having common experiences. And so can they talk with each other about that? Do we have the kind of funding sources that really respect and value mentoring and the time commitment that it takes? Do we have the special programs for faculty to really help them with that? Are we asking student responses and student opinions on what that experience was like for them? So I think there are some institutional supports that are actually relatively easily built in, and a focus that I think schools can take, perhaps more than we're taking now, to ensure that that's a good relationship.
If I'm going to try to generalize, I'm going to say that time for faculty to engage in mentorship, having that built into the responsibilities for faculty members, I think is huge. And opportunities to recognize mentorship as part of a learning process. So whether it's allowing for non-traditional credit-bearing opportunities so that faculty can be engaged, students can make time in schedules, and supporting the idea that mentorship occurs across a spectrum of environments so that it's not just classroom, it can be project, it can also be extracurricular things, and all of those things are important in establishing how research and how mentoring gets folded into the students' educational pathways.
You have to have support for faculty. It has to be part of faculty teaching load. It has to be part of the evaluation process for faculty. Faculty have to know it's valued, and they have to know that their time will be rewarded for doing that work. They have to have supports for their own development as researchers and as scholars. You can't have a strong program in mentored undergraduate research if you don't have faculty who are engaged in research and who are supported in their research efforts. So you have to have an engaged faculty in research and have supports for them to be engaged. You need, for the students, they have to have the disciplinary tools to do that work, and you have to scaffold that throughout the curriculum. They have to begin early in their time and begin learning how to ask questions. It has to be an environment where they can be creative, critical early on in their experiences.
Faculty mentors need to have support in lots of ways. They need to know that, especially for those who are pre-tenure, that the efforts that they're putting into mentoring undergraduate research are going to be rewarded, are going to be part of that evaluation process for them. That the institution, or at least the program in which they're working, has really well-established, articulated value placed on those efforts because of the time that's needed, and just it involves every part of that faculty member's career, really. And along with that are things like availability in the curriculum for research-intensive courses and a research-rich, experience, so that undergraduate research isn't just affecting a handful of students every year, though those who can be awarded a summer grant, for example, but so that we can really get this practice infused into what we do in our daily life. And if it's part of a faculty member's teaching load, that's significant. And then when it's above and beyond, when it is a summer program, I think it's essential that mentors' time is financially compensated. There are some places where I know faculty mentors do the work out of belief in this pedagogy and in this high impact practice without any mentor compensation in the summer, or very minimal, but of course just out of justice, that they need to be compensated for their time. As my provost put it, and I thought very well, mentoring a summer student, for example, should be able to be competitive with teaching a summer course, so that faculty can make those decisions depending on where they are in their own scholarship and their own professional lives about what's appropriate at that time.
At Elon, we have the teacher scholar document that has evolved to have a prominent mentoring piece, and that document guides our activities as a faculty member. I think that was a really important step. I think increasing support for scholarship in general has been instrumental in supporting undergraduate research. Our network of mentors on our campus are fantastic. And I think and as the director of the undergraduate research program, and I've said this publicly and I'll continue to say it publicly, our greatest resource for successful undergraduate research are our mentors. And it's not just the mentor-student dynamic, it's the mentor-mentor dynamic, that we learn from each other in a really strong community every day. So every dynamic, when we engage a student, every dynamic is different. And sometimes we encounter things that we have not encountered before. And it's great to be able to bounce those situations off of our colleagues and get a variety of perspectives, and really thoughtful perspectives with a depth of experience that we can then take back and try and put into practice, hoping to shape that dynamic into a really positive interaction.
Well, I think one of the challenges really has to do with the faculty work and faculty time. So many colleges, residential liberal arts colleges, for example, small universities really pride themselves on working very closely with students from day one of a student's career. That's in classes. The classes are smaller. There's special opportunities that develop and those kinds of things. And so that sort of relationship that gets developed between faculty and student is one of the things that we speak very highly on, we stake our reputations on. Undergraduate research, whether it's special programs in the summer for students or special opportunities during an academic year, are in many cases for faculty and really for students add-ons to what they're already doing. And so I think it's really important to keep aware of really the two sets of people who are involved in the undergraduate research enterprise, which is the students, who we tend to think a lot about, but there are faculty who are on the other side that are really making that experience work. And what are ways that institutions, smaller institutions, can be supportive and recognize the work that's happening, if there are ways that we can figure out how to compensate that, so that there's an appreciation of that extra work that faculty are taking on, really above and beyond the ordinary kind of advising and mentoring they're doing with their major advisees or in classroom situations. And I think that's one of the important things to keep in mind. I think it tends to sort of deepen and enrich the way that the pride that we have in the kinds of close relationships. And I think much of that comes out of these special opportunities and actually translates back in to classrooms and with the work you do with major advisees or things like that. But I think it's important to keep both sets of people in that equation in mind.